What is up? Hope life is treating you well. Welcome to your therapy session, your reality therapy session for today. You can cash this out with a reality check. We're going to talk a little bit about men and identity, some of the things that I've seen in my practice, and I continue to see. This is part two. I talked a little bit about this on my live stream with my daughter. There is a gift in being able to see a thought as a thought. This video is for you if you struggle as a man with your thinking, sort of like that stinking thinking and that negative self talk that's really attacking your self esteem, your confidence, and you're struggling with on how to see beyond some of that nastiness that's going on in your mind to see possibility, to see opportunity. Maybe you're that guy that's comparing himself to his friends, his social network. Maybe you're comparing yourself to a work colleague, family member. And what are you telling yourself, right? It starts with the great, right? I am. Or it could just be an I thought, right? I'm not good enough. I'm not prepared. I won't make it. I won't succeed. We want to pay close. We want to keep our eye on the I, right? On those I thoughts, because those are seeds. Thoughts are seeds that get planted into the fertile soil of our minds and they develop into these trees of either hindrance, right, or strongholds. You got weeds and all kind of terrain you're trying to navigate is rocky. The terrain is dangerous depending on what you've been planting in the garden of your mind. Or you can plant a beautiful garden, a beautiful territory or landscape, for lack of better words, right, where you can actually see more clearly. So you're struggling with your thoughts, struggling with those negative thinking, sort of like sentiments in your mind. Your brain is telling you things that go against your value system. We talked about this. As men, is so important now than ever. When you look out into the world and you see all the chaos and the destruction that's going on, whether it's politics, economics, right, society, socializing, or sort of like the social aspects or the social dimensions of society today, a lot of it goes left just based off of men not having healthy relationships with their thinking. Okay, so it says here, when a man turns I think into an I am. Hey, what's up, Miss V? Hey, how you doing? Israel Santiago. That's a dope name. 7501. Good to see you guys. God bless you guys. When a man turns an I think into an I am, something subtle but dangerous happens. A thought is just a passive mental event. Hey, what's up, Squad Muhammad? Good to see you. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for subbing. Thoughts are just temporary. They're temporary passing mental events. I can't tell you how much time I spend teaching clients this. A lot of people have difficulty seeing a thought as something temporary. You ever had thoughts where it's just beating you down, right? So it says here, hey, what's up, Amir Vasquez? When a man turns an I think thought into an I am, something subtle but dangerous happens. A passing mental event, fatigue, fear, doubt, comparison, crosses an invisible line and becomes a statement of self. I think I'm failing quietly hardens into I'm a failure. What was once information becomes identity. Thoughts were never meant to be your household, they were meant to be the weather. But when a young man mistakes the weather for the sky, he reorganizes his entire sense of self around a moment that was never permanent. What you want to start getting good at in 2026 is just using metaphors to capture a thought as something temporary. When you find yourself having like really just bad days emotionally, because more than likely there's like hard thoughts on your mind with everything going on. This is like the weather. These are like clouds. You don't have to necessarily verbalize it because I know you guys are so tough, but you want to, this is just cars passing by. You want to, as much as you can, imagine connecting the thought experience to something impermanent, whether it's cars passing down a highway, people or neighbors walking down the street. Maybe you're walking in a crowded, busy area or environment, and everybody, you're kind of bumping into people. You're in New York, give your mind a territory metaphorically that can help you break this relationship, young man, with seeing your thoughts as something permanent. Your thoughts are not permanent. The thoughts you had at 10 years old, hopefully, if you're in your 40s, are not the same. All right. So as young men, we need to be able to have a more healthier, objective perspective of our thinking. Okay. Your thoughts are not meant to be these permanent jail cells. All right. They're just transitory data about the quality of your experiences. And sometimes your spirit will put thoughts into your mind just to kind of give you hunches or insight on the terrain that you're in. So it says here for young men, especially, this fusion is coercive because identity is still forming. So when you're under 15, and you got to be very careful about what you allow yourself to be exposed to. All that pornography you young dudes are watching, all that lust and sexualizing of women, you want to be careful with that shit. Because as you get older and you start talking about wanting a wife or having daughters and having children, all these different things, and even if you don't, just interacting socially in the world, you got to interact with women, all right? Whether it's at your job, whether it's in your family, and you don't want to be that guy that has this nastiness about women in your mind because you wasn't protecting the grounds and the gatekeeping of your spirit, all right, of your soul. So you have to learn how to change your relationship with your thinking, protect your mind from certain influences because it can just do more damage than good. All right. I've been doing therapy. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I have been doing counseling work since 2009. A lot of you guys are probably 5, 6 years old. All right. I've been doing therapy for a long time. So I have my own practice. I see probably 6 or 7 people a day. I just got out of a session. I got a client coming in about 30 minutes. So I'm going to try to squeeze as much wisdom as I can. And the reason why I do these videos, because I know it's not popular for a lot of us as men to go to therapy. We're like, why the fuck am I going to therapy? I got close friends I talk to work as my therapy. I go to the bar. But it's important because you want to have a professional, someone who's done the work, who's done the book work, who has life experiences, who can speak to what you're going through. Sometimes you can't tell your homies everything. Sometimes you can't tell your wife everything. You can't tell the bartender everything. So it's so important for us as young men to be in counseling, sometimes just to get another perspective, for lack of better words. So in psychology, we teach people that your emotional state is directly connected to your thought state. So if you're having a rough day, maybe you're mad as hell, you're pissed off, you're moody, more than likely it's because you're thinking in a certain direction that's sort of like perpetuating those emotions. So if you want to get to the emotion, sometimes you have to go through your thoughts. What am I thinking? That's why we talk about journaling, writing your thoughts out. Maybe using your phone and recording yourself saying, hey, right now I'm thinking about some shit that happened with my girl. Right now I'm kind of mad as hell because my mom is telling me you go to school. I don't want to go to school. Or I got to do whatever it is, speak it out. Because to get to the emotion, a lot of times you have to get to the thought process. What is the narrative that you're telling yourself? So it says a temporary emotional state, which is a feeling, behind or feeling like you've been rejected or unsure, arrives during a vulnerable season and it gets interpreted as truth rather than context. The mind doesn't say, I'm experiencing fear. It says, I am weak. It doesn't say, I'm overwhelmed. It says, I can't handle life. Over time, these conclusions become internal laws. The man doesn't just respond to life, he lives inside a verdict. His choices begin to narrow, his risk tolerance shrinks, and his future begins answering to a belief that was born in a passing moment. Seeing a thought as a thought is an act of freedom. A thought is a suggestion. It's not a sentence. It has movement, a tone, and timing, but no authority unless it's given authority. When a man learns to say, I'm having the thought that, instead of I am, space opens. In that space, identity can breathe. The self steps out of the courtroom and back into the body. I was doing a family therapy session today. Father, mother, daughter, son, sort of like your typical nuclear family. Dad commits infidelity years ago. Mom and dad been married probably 30, 31 years. He goes out and cheat. He feels like there's no communication between him and his wife around finances. They're both on different pages and he was upset. He feels like his needs are not getting met. She's not intimate enough. She's not meeting me where I need to be and I need to get my needs met, right? So that's his truth. As a consequence, the family is divided. Now we're in family therapy. The family's devastated. It was so hard to get dad to step outside of his narrative and the things that he's thinking, to even look at the impact of his actions on his kids. It was really challenging. I only have that much time in a therapy session because I have like 4 people. They all have their opinions. They all want to respond. And I was just like, man, I work with a lot of clients, so I wasn't that surprised, but it was so hard to get dad. I was like, what role do you think you played in some of the stuff that's going on? And this isn't to beat dad up, but what role do you think you played in some of the hurt that's been going on? Well, I kind of cheated. I did committed infidelity. I'm sure that, I've caused some damage, things like that. I was like, okay, cool. What could be some positives of the role? I don't believe there's any positives. If I'm this person, why it was so hard to get dad? I said, well, maybe the positive is that, well, at least I'm taking accountability. I don't like being the perpetrator. I don't like being looked at as the bad guy, but I can own I fucked up, right? I can own that. It was so hard for him to see that. So sometimes when I'm working with clients, it's not that the therapist isn't effective or the tools are not effective. Sometimes it's just some of you guys have a hard time seeing outside of yourselves. You get so locked in, and that's why biblically they call it like these strongholds of the mind. It just gets damn near impossible to get people to see outside of their own thought process. It gets really, 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 really challenging to get people to see outside of their thoughts. All right. So telling yourself, I'm noticing that I'm having the thought instead of I am this thought allows you to have some mental flexibility, to have some mental freedom. And in that space, your identity can breathe. The self steps out of the courtroom and back into the body. Thoughts lose their power to define who you are and return back to their proper role. They're just temporary. All right. They're not permanent. Information passing through your awareness. Like I said, it's just a car driving by. All right. If your highway is an awareness freeway, that thought is just a car passing by, something like that. Once you get into the car and you are the car, this car is me. I'm this car. I'm this vehicle. It just gets that much more difficult for you to even be objective and even recognize that you're just driving. All right. Identity was never meant to be built on mental noise. It is meant to be rooted in your values, your presence, and lived direction. When a man understands that thoughts come and go, but being remains, he stops collapsing into every feeling state. He learns that discomfort is not a definition, fear is not a prophecy, and doubt is not a diagnosis. The moment a man stops confusing what passes through him with who he is, identity begins to stabilize. All right. Your identity begins to stabilize when you stop defining yourself by what you're going through. All right. And what's going through you. All right. Many men are doing everything they were told that would make them feel whole. Guys got jobs. They're working 9 to 5s. They're very successful. Hey, what's up, Muhammad? But they're providing, they're improving, they're staying disciplined, they're staying productive, right? But from the outside, it looks like success, but inside, something feels off for a lot of these men. Instead of fulfillment, there's pressure. Instead of peace, there's comparison for young men. Winning didn't end the struggle, it intensified it. The emptiness doesn't come from losing. Sometimes men can be winning, and because they might have a negative emotion or a negative thought, they don't feel like it can just deplenish that state of just success for a lot of us as young men. The emptiness doesn't come from losing, it comes from comparison. Men constantly measure themselves against other men. Right now, I Show Speed is popping. He's doing the Africa tour. You can't even scroll through Instagram without seeing something about I Show Speed. I was in the military for a number of years, so I've been around a lot of men of success. Even from my private school in psychology, I've seen a lot of success, even from working. So I'm kind of used to being around people who are doing a little bit better than me. I think that's one thing what I love about the military is that you're in an environment of just winners. Okay, so you get used to learning from a lot in the military structure, how it's set up. If men are outperforming or if they're doing better, they might get higher ranks, they might get different positions. And A lot of times they're just there to instruct you and to teach you how to win. Okay. Now, every guy may not have that sort uh, of intention, but that's just how the military set up. When you got other men who are winning, other men that are doing good, it inspires you. And a lot of times they take on teaching positions to kind of teach you how to win. So the military community teaches you to be around other men who are winning. Now, in the civilian world, it's a little bit different. Some guys, if they didn't grow up or have experiences and environments of dudes that are doing well, that are super successful, they may feel a certain type of way. I notice in the civilian world, it's almost like a threat, to, yeah, that's really good. Clarence parents have a real good marriage. Some guys get jealous when you're winning in a civilian world, where sometimes dudes don't even want others to know they're even winning because they're scared they might lose their life. So it's different in the civilian world than the military community. But right now, ISO speed is all over the place, and that's probably making some men feel a certain type of way. Dudes who do social media, dudes who have social media channels, maybe they might be a little jealous. Maybe they might be a little insecure, right? That comparison factor that we do as men. Oh man, my channel is crap. I'm not going to be as good as Speed. I'm not going to be as influential as him. But maybe that's not your path in life. Everybody's not born to be an ISO speed. You're born to be you. Like I know, I maybe not even reach that sort of height, and I'm fine with that. I'm good with my little audience doing my videos. If they pick up, they pick up. If they don't, that's cool. I'm not measuring and defining my worth and my value off of doing this work. There was a point where I was, but when you start YouTube and you're fresh and you're new, it's common to kind of feel like, man, I want to do as good as the next man. But you got to kind of accept everybody's built differently, right? And ISO speed didn't start off like that. He had to work his ass off, right, to get to where he's at. So if anything, it should be inspiring. Like, man, you could come from Ohio, you can come from Indiana, you can come from the Midwest where there ain't a lot of shit going on, and you could be so influential, right? But some guys don't look at it like that. Okay. So it says here, this emptiness doesn't come from losing, it comes from comparison. Men constantly measure themselves against other men. Who's ahead? Who's earning more? Who's more confident? And that comparison produces quiet internal statements. I'm not as good as ISO speed, right? I should be further. I'm falling short. Even when a man is winning, right? A lot of you dudes can be winning in your lane, but when you're so busy focusing on somebody else's lane, you think you're losing, right? And the scoreboard in your mind keeps moving. So it says here, underneath comparison are relentless I thoughts. I'm failing. I won't make it. I can't do this. I have too much on my plate, right? These aren't just thoughts, they become identity statements. Over time, the I think turns into an I am. This is identity collapse. When a man's worth is tied to performance, productivity, or comparison, his identity becomes conditional. Any slowdown feels dangerous. Any weakness feels like exposure, even when rest feels undeserved. Winning doesn't fix this, it reinforces it. The issue isn't ambition, it isn't masculinity, it isn't work ethic. It's the identity has been outsourced to outcomes. And when identity depends on conditions, emptiness is inevitable. Challenge some of those thoughts. Any thought that has an I in the front of it, try to anchor that I and that I am in your value system, in your principles, in your ethics, maybe in scripture, if you're a believer, something positive. Try not to anchor your I thoughts, your I am thinking into your conditions. Try not to anchor them in comparison. Try not to anchor them in your insecurities, because the I thoughts, the I am thoughts can significantly impact your mood throughout the course of the day, because then you start believing it's an absolute. I can't get out of this. It's a permanent condition. So just telling you, change your relationship with your thoughts. Look at them as something conditional, something temporary. Cars driving by on the highway, people walking past you on a crowded street, clouds in the sky. Practice associating your thoughts with metaphorically temporary circumstances. All right. Peace.